Right, so the job in hand is to make a new base plate for this. This is the airbox and throttle bodies off my Hillclimb MX5. I made this a couple of years ago to go with this back plate. And as you can see, the back plate is just made out of several bits of aluminium bent up and pop riveted together. I'd just like to make that a bit tidier to look better. Won't work any better, I doubt, but it will look better. And it would look better in carbon fibre to match the airbox. Plus it means I can get a better seal at this end, and then all of the air going into the engine is going through there and not through silly little gaps like that. So if we put that to one side, I've made a start. I've made a mould. It's a simple plywood block, the relevant thickness, the relevant size, so that fits nicely over it, so it's the same depth, and that is shaped to match the airbox. I coated it in cling film so that the carbon fibre will not get into the grain of the wood and stick. So the next step will be to cut some carbon fibre cloth. I'm using 200 grams per square metre cloth, just bought cheaply off eBay, nothing spectacular about it. I bought a metre square piece. I've already cut it down to this, which then needs cutting again. And what the tape is for is so that when I cut it, the ends don't fray up and lose strands. That edge has already got a line of stitching across it to keep it firm. So we'll cut it in half. Roughly down the middle of the tape, and that should then give us two pieces that we can lay over. I'm going to do a double thickness, so two sheets. First one will be placed on. I'll mix up some resin. Coat that in a thin coat of resin, lay that on, fold it down the edges and the sides, work it into the resin. Then after a little while we'll put a bit more resin on it. So that'll be the first layer. We'll put another coat of resin on, and then the second layer of fibre and another coat of resin to work in thoroughly so that it gets thoroughly glued up. I've put a little dam of silicone, just a bead around the edge of that base plate, so that any resin that runs off this will be contained on that base plate, which is disposable anyway, but it won't run off the edge hopefully and make a mess of my workbench. So that's it. Next step will be to mix up the resin, so I'll be back in a few moments. Right, so here's the resin we're going to be mixing. Bought from Resin for Art off eBay. It's a 2-to-1 mix, so 2 parts of this to 1 part of this. That's the hardener, and that's the resin base. That's measured by weight. So to that end, I've got a simple kitchen scale. I'll switch that on. I'm going to mix it in this smoothie cup. I bought 10 of these off eBay. It was the cheapest way to get them, just as disposable mixing cups. I can get the scale to 0. Yes, right, we're zeroed. There are formulae for working out how much resin you want for a particular job based on surface area of it and how many plies you're working with. I haven't researched them, I've been a bit lazy, so we're just going to wing it a bit and mix up a dose and see how we go. We'll probably mix too much, I'll probably mix too much, you're just watching it. $70 grams. So at 2 to 1, if there's 70 grams of that, I want 35 grams of the hardener, which gives us a total of 105 grams. $106. I think that's close enough. I doubt if it'll make a great deal of difference to the finished job. To be fair, when I made the airbox itself, I didn't measure it out, I guesstimated, and that's worked okay. So now we mix that up thoroughly. Trying not to mix too much air into it, because obviously we don't want air bubbles in there, but we do need to mix it in thoroughly so that everything cures at the same rate and everything cures, because as I know from personal experience, if you don't mix it thoroughly enough, some areas of the resin won't have any hardener mixed to it and it won't cure, and it just runs and makes a horrible sticky mess for you. So the mixing is very important. Now one little trick that I picked up from watching some YouTube videos on how to do this, even YouTubers use YouTube, is once you think you've mixed it enough, pour it into another cup, and that enables you to make sure that everything is mixed, including off the surface of the cup. I'll put that to one side for disposal later, and now we'll give it a second mix up just to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. If you want to do a really high quality job, vacuum bagging is the answer, or using pre-preg if you really want to play with the fancy stuff. For this job, a simple wet layup will do. I haven't got the vacuum pump and relevant gear to do vacuum bagging. I know you can use a vacuum cleaner to create the vacuum for it, but for what this is, I personally just think that's a bit over the top and I can't be bothered. So there we go, that's well mixed. So we'll put that to one side. Now we'll get the mould in place. We'll let that stand for a few minutes, and if you have a look you'll see it's a bit cloudy and got lots of bubbles in it. So we'll let it stand for a few minutes to let the air bubbles come out, and then we'll apply it. Just applying it with a very simple 1/2 inch 12mm paintbrush. I'll let that stand for a few minutes and I'll come back to you. Unfortunately, when I was laying this up, the camera thrower wobbler and didn't record it. So I'll talk you through briefly what I've done. I mixed the resin up as I've shown you, and I poured some on gently and brushed it over to give an even coating and down the sides, around all the four sides. And I laid the carbon fibre on, dabbed it gently into the resin, and then put another layer of resin over the top, brushed that in, worked it in to get it into the carbon fibre, folded the sides down, but they wanted to keep opening out to flat again, so I've had to tape them in place. I suspect I'm going to have to cut the finished product off the mould just by cutting around the edges with a small high-speed disc cutter. So then I put a second coat of resin on and put the second layer of carbon fibre weave on, and again poured some more resin over the top, brushed it through, stippled it in to make sure it got soaked into the carbon fibre, and then again down the sides folded the ends over, a bit more tape to hold it in place. That's about as much as I can do at this point. I need to leave that to cure. It's been an hour or so now since I did it, and it's well on the way to curing. It's nice and warm in here, so it's curing quite well. All we can do now is wait until that's finished curing, which will probably be tomorrow now, and then we can get it off the mould, mark it out, and cut out the holes for the throttle bodies as per are in this one. Okay, so today is now tomorrow. The resin is all thoroughly cured, so we can now see about cutting this off the mould. I'm going to give it a go first with an oscillating tool, multi-tool they call them. I'm wearing gloves, and I'm going to wear a face mask, a dust mask, because the carbon fibre dust is even worse than fiberglass for being an irritant. So I've got dust extraction set up. It's going to be noisy, so I'll put a bit of music on over this in the editing suite. Here goes. Hi guys, and welcome back to the shed. It's just over a week since I did the carbon fibre layup and made the base for the airbox for the race car. The next step is to cut out the slots for the throttle bodies for it to mount to. So to enable that, I've put a layer of masking tape on the surface and drilled a pilot hole for that stud to locate into. That is where the air temperature sensor mounts to. Then I can place that on, and I've just drawn round the insides of the holes with a pencil onto the masking tape so that I can see. So I've got markings to cut out. Now the next step I'm going to do is with a craft knife just carefully cut the tape around that outline, and the same on that one, and then we can see about cutting out the carbon fibre itself so that that will mount to the throttle bodies. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on a pair of gloves, because as I said earlier, the carbon fibre dust is even more of an irritant than fiberglass, and as I get older the more conscious I get about my health. So I've got a nice sharp craft knife. Cut carefully, as closely to the line as I can get. There will be a certain amount of final fettling and hand filing to get it to fit perfectly, I'm sure. We should be able to peel that tape away from the bit that's going to be cut out, like so. Discard that, do the same on this one. There we go. I just put a couple of wraps of tape around the body to hold the base to it, like so. On there, and I think on there. That will hold the two halves together, and I can put my dust extraction vacuum cleaner in there, and it will suck the dust away inside as I cut, hopefully. So we're going to put a mask on now. Right, there we go. It's going to be noisy, so I'll put a bit of music over it. I'll probably speed the replay up for you, because it's going to be time consuming. You're not going to want to sit and watch all however many minutes it takes. But I've got a Dremel type multi-tool with a multi-fluted straight cutting bit on the end. We'll see how it goes. Well, that first one's cut out quite quickly and nicely. I've only roughed it out. I've kept quite an eighth of an inch, 3mm for most of it away from the edge of the tape. I can tidy that up in due course. I'll do the other one. Right, that's both holes roughed out. Now the one thing on the second hole, the dust extraction wasn't working terribly well. I suspected that might happen because airflow will always follow the path of least resistance, and there's a nice big hole here for the air to go in, so it didn't get sucked in very much through the slot I was creating at this end. Not to worry, when I'm tidying this one up, I'll tape over that one, and vice versa. I'll tape over this one to clean this one up. Okay, so I've trimmed up the first one. I've moved the tape from here over to there, so I can now trim up this one. There may be a little bit of video missing there because I had a problem with the memory card in the camera. I've put a new card in now, so hopefully we'll get on. So just offering it up as a trial fit. I've got a bit more to come out around this edge, so if I can just mark that, get that in place. Turns out most of the burr that was on the inside was actually the cling film that I put over the mould to stop the carbon fibre sticking to the wood. So I think the craft knife might be better, give a finer edge. So that marked up. Just have the dust extraction close by. And that's pretty much it. That's not a bad fit at all. Just needs a bit of cleaning up and a few holes drilled through to match up with the riv nuts in the main body, so the two can be screwed together. And there we are. Jobs are good. I'll give that a fettle up with a sander and we'll see what we look like. Right, I think that looks pretty good. Bit of a tidy up. These are the intake trumpets and their relevant spacers. So that goes on like that. And that goes on like that. One, two, that's looking good. I'm quite liking the look of that. There we go. I've got a bit of cleaning up to do with it, and so I've got to drill those 6 holes to fasten the 2 parts together. But I think the next part of this video is going to be showing this mounted on the car, and we'll see what it looks like and see what it sounds like. Bye for now. Hi again. Today is tomorrow, but we're not in the shed. Today we're in the workshop. I'm going to refit the throttle bodies to Rory. I'll just reposition the camera so you can see him. Rory is the race car. Just a silly little nickname, bit of fun. If I reposition the camera like that, you should be able to see what I'm doing. So here's the throttle body assembly with the airbox. And it fits in like so. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but it fits quite well, like so. And then we just secure it in place by tightening up the 4 clamping screws. That clamps the intake rubbers onto the inlet manifold and secures the throttle bodies nice and firmly. Now, the way I've got this set up, I'm using the standard Mazda injectors, which are directed to the head, not into the cylinder but into the head. So there's no injectors on the actual throttle bodies, therefore I don't have to disturb any fuel rails. This device is the cold start enrichment unit, which goes on into there with that little bracket to clamp it in place, and that screw to secure it. This is a bit of a fiddly job. Not the least of all because once you've got your hands in there to do it, you can't really see what you're doing. You can get that lined up onto the screw hole in the leak bar. Which I'm not making a very good job of at the moment. That's got it now. It's a simple thermostatic unit. It's connected into the cooling system. When it's cold, it pulls this rod which rotates that bar and opens bypass valves to allow more air in. And then as it warms up, there's a wax capsule in there that expands with the heat, pushes that rod out and closes those bars off. Those valves off rather. So that goes in like so. Two M6 bolts hold that in place. And then this lever, this rod, allows me to adjust the idle air once it's warmed up. Right, so the next piece to go in is this contraption which allows the original throttle cable to pass through here onto this spool, which then as you press the throttle pedal it rotates that drum and pulls this secondary cable which is connected to the throttle spindle, which will then open the throttles. And the reason I've done it that way is A, the original throttle cable isn't really long enough to reach conveniently into there, and the bracket would be mounting directly upwards, it looks messy. And secondly, the throttle spindles work in the opposite direction on these throttle bodies to the original. So this reverses the spindle movement and makes for a nice smooth cable run. And it's a bit fiddly to get into place. A pair of long nose pliers might help. That in and just rotate it slightly, and then that cable goes around the groove on the spindle spool. That will go over there and sit like that. The throttle cable passes through on that bracket. And then hooks into its slot on the nylon spool and runs in that groove. Then we can mount the cable into there. Right, this is officially a strut brace, but the Mazda MX5 has double wishbone suspension with independent coilover damper units, not McPherson struts. What that means is the top of these mounts are not subjected to side loads, and even if they were, any lateral movement makes no difference to the suspension geometry. So therefore, a strut brace does absolutely nothing for the handling of the car. Some people say it makes the car feel tauter, some people say it improves the handling. It's all in the mind. It cannot physically do anything for the handling. And people say, well, why do Mazda provide it? Mazda make it because it sells cars. It's a sports car, it's got a strut brace, it must be good. Simple as that. I have an alternative use for it. It enables me to put a top engine brace in here, like so. It also provides a mounting point for that throttle adapter unit, but that brace stops the engine rocking when it's being revved. Simple as that. Right, that's the strut brace nipped in place, the engine brace. So I can tighten that bolt up now. Tighten that bolt up. Connect the throttle position sensor and fit the air temperature sensor. Reconnect the flexible pipe from the air filter, and that should be good to start. Let's give it a go. Considering the throttle bodies haven't been fitted to this car for nearly 6 months, and that has literally just fired on the first touch of the button. That's how sweet this engine is. I'm going to call that one a roaring success. See you in the next vid.